Thank you. And we're back. So, you know, when we're writing songs, sometimes we're writing songs from, like, personal experience. Sometimes we're writing songs just sort of like as characters, almost like a short story writer. You know, a lot of times somebody will hear a song and they'll assume that whatever is in the song happened to you. And sometimes that's the case, but not always, not necessarily. And sometimes we're writing songs about, you know, maybe who we were at a certain time. This is a song about, I guess, who I was maybe 15, 20 years ago. 15 years ago. I'm not, 15, 20 years ago, something like that. We won't worry about it. When I was a young, directionless 20-something, and now I'm a, you know, like, we'll say mid to late 30s something. 40-ish. Yeah. 39. But I have a young man's neck. You know, I tell my agent, I say I could really be getting roles of a like 20-year-old. I have a 20-year-old's neck. I don't know why I started saying that. I really don't. But because I'm getting old. What was I saying? Because I'm an old millennial, you know. And when you're an old millennial, I do this thing with my student. I teach at a college back home, and I do this thing called old millennial, where I'll do like an old timey voice, but I'll tell them old millennial stuff, and I'll say like, "When I was your age, we used to carry our CDs around in binders," you know, or when I was your age, we didn't have GPS in the car. You had to print directions off of MapQuest. That's how it was, you know, stuff like that. So. Huh? Yeah, and tape them together. Man, my first long to like up to like New York and New England, I had this notebook of just directions. And in hindsight, I'm like, how did I do that at like 20 years old? Have this just big notebook of directions to the city, to the venue, to the hotel, to the next place. But anyway, here's a song about a old millennial 15 or 20 years ago. Well, I'm staring at the waitress. She's as pretty as she can be. One of these days I'm gonna take her out. She's gonna fall in love with me. But not today, because maybe I am afraid of commitment. Or maybe I just like to take things slow. Cause I'm a 20-something trying to find myself, just like everybody else I know. For instance, I read a story in the paper titled "Local Boy Makes Good," but they don't make movies back in Greenville, and that's why he moved to Hollywood. Not gonna take no for an answer, determined to make it any way he could. Well, he came home the star of a soup commercial, and now he's the pride of my neighborhood. Well, my best friend is an artist. We meet for lunch every Saturday. I'll say, I like the way you see things, friend. And he'll say, well, Jake, I like the way you play. So we plan out our lives over cups of coffee and newspapers and Bibles and sketch pads, sitting for hours without buying anything in that same little cafe. We've got our lives all planned out for tomorrow, but we don't have a clue what we're doing today. staring at the waitress. She is just as pretty as she can be. And if I'm not mistaken, I think she might be staring back at me. But friend, there ain't no rest for the weary, so I just try not to let it show. 'Cause I'm a 20-something trying to find myself, just like everybody else I know. Thank you. I promised we would do some old stuff in the late set. You must remember this: a kiss is still a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man and man must have his mate. That no one can deny. It's still the same old story, the fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. Let me hear ya. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. Every time I hear this song, I think that song could have been written about some guy driving around the country playing guitar for people. Maybe you'll think the same thing when you hear this. Up where the smoke is all billowed and curled, between pavement and stars, lies the chimney sweep swirl, where there's hardly no day and there's hardly no night, just things half in shadow and halfways in light. On the rooftops of Waxahachie, You made a face. I'll fix it. On the rooftops of London. I knew you weren't going to be able to sleep tonight unless I did that right. On the rooftops of London. What a sight. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim cheree. A sweep is as lucky can be. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim cheroo. Good luck will rub off when I shake hands with you. Or blow me a kiss, 'cause that's lucky too. Now that the ladder of life has been strung, you might think a sweep's on the bottommost rung. Though I spend my time in the ashes and smoke, in this old wide world there's no happier bloke. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim cheree. When you're with a sweep, you're in glad company, 'cause nowhere is there a more happier crew than them what sings chim chim cheree, chim cheroo. Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim cheree. When you're with a sweep, you're in glad company. Nowhere is there a more happier crew than them what sings chim chim cheree, chim cheroo. Chim chimney, chim chim cheree, chim cheroo. Thank you. Thank you very much. Though I spend my time in the ashes and smoke, in this old wide world there's no happier bloke. So this is going to be almost definitely, I'm pretty sure, the last Mary Poppins song of the night. Maybe in the third set.
I remember the last time you were here singing that little baby.
Oh. One of my favorite memories of our little Lola was singing. Man, you know, sometimes in life you love all your pets, but sometimes you just get like that right one, you know. And we had our little Lola, and we lost her last year at 17. She had a good run at 17, but I can't help but think those flippin' turtles lived to be like 300 years old or something. And that makes me so mad. And my wife was here with me, and she was sitting right down front. And Lola was always just so good. We could take her places. She could hide in, like, my wife's bag, and we could check into a hotel, and nobody would ever know she was in there. But for whatever reason, sitting right down front, she could see me, and she decided she was going to start being bad. So she was trying to get away from Mama, and so I picked her up and I sang my slightly rewritten version of the old Chaplin jazz standard Smile, that I just changed the word smile to wag. And that video is out there. And I sang wag though your heart is aching. I sang it to Lola, and she just went to sleep up here. And I handed her back to Jess. It was one of my favorite memories of Lola.
Yes.
And
my favorite memories of in the music room.
well, that means a lot. Mark Maron has a podcast where he interviews people. He started out mostly interviewing comedians. He interviews a lot of people now, but he interviewed Jonathan Winters before Jonathan Winters passed away. And he went and did it at his house. And before the interview, Jonathan Winters was like, I want to show you something. And they walked down this hallway, and there's just all these pictures on the wall of just a life in show business, and with, Reagan and Carol Burnett and on movie sets, and, with Sinatra. And he just walks past all that and points at this picture of him as a little kid with his dog. And he said, I still miss that dog. Ugh. Just heartbreaking. Yeah. So we'll send this one out with a lot of love to Lola.
Yes.
If I play it right. If I mess it all up, it's for you people. This is a beautiful old song from Mary Poppins called Feed the Birds. And I'm just going to play it. I'm not going to sing it. simple with you. Listen, listen, she's calling to you. Feed the birds, toppings a bag. Thank you very much. Man, isn't that a beautiful little song?
Mm-hmm.
Make me cry.
Well, they say that was Walt Disney's favorite song, was Feed the Birds from Mary Poppins. And he would have Dick Sherman from the Sherman Brothers, you know, that wrote all those songs we love so much from those old Disney movies. He would call Dick Sherman into his office, and Walt had a piano in there, and he would just say, "Play that song for me, Dick." And Dick knew which one he was talking about, and he would just sit and play it on the piano, and Walt would just get in his zone. He'd say, "That's what it's all about, man." So I love playing it. Let me get my guitar back in tune, though. Let me get it back in the right tuning.
How many different tunings do you use?
You know, not a lot. Maybe like 3, including standard. Not a lot. I mean, I'm always up here tweaking it, you know, because they always go out of tune. You know, guitars don't stay in tune like a piano or something, where you have the guy come tune it, you know, every 6 months or a year, and it's good. You know, I can get up here, and if I'm getting hot or the lights are hot, you know, it can be sensitive to that kind of heat and barometric pressure, and
Oh, yes. It all matters.
yeah, yeah. They're very sensitive and fussy, much like the people who play them.
How many guitars?
Other people. Let's see, I've got 3 acoustics, and I've got 2 electrics, not including a couple of little starter guitars that are still at my parents' house. I don't like having a lot of I mean, to some people 3 guitars is a lot, but to, you know, that's for someone who plays full time, like that's maybe not all that much. 3 acoustics and 2 electrics.
Randy Treadway's got you beat.
I'm sure. See, if I get a new thing, I want to get rid of 2 old things, you know. So I'm not a big gear guy. I don't like keeping a lot of extra stuff around, because it can be just like overwhelming. You know, I get like option overload, you know. So here's one.
So you said you were a professor. Do you teach music?
I teach guitar. I teach guitar at the college that I dropped out of.
I want an example.
I thought you were kicked out of it.
Huh? No. Whoever you heard that from was yanking your chain. I didn't. They didn't quit me. I quit them. And now I'm back, and I'm teaching a bunch of music students how to play guitar, and I do that during the week. And a couple of years ago, they were like, "Jacob, you're like, you know, almost at full-time hours, but we can't hire you full-time because you don't have a degree." And I was like, I don't know if I want to do either of those things, you know. And then and then COVID happened, and I was really glad I had that teaching gig, because, you know, being a performer during COVID was like being a dentist if people didn't have any teeth anymore. So I started, and now I'm about halfway through a guitar performance degree from Berkeley. And by the time I'm, 41, I will have a guitar performance degree, and I'll be collecting that sweet health insurance and full-time pay, which will kind of allow me to be out on the road a little bit more again than I'm able to be right now, while I'm still like doing classes and trying to keep up with stuff. Anyway, here's a song I wrote. You got a couple more in you?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure, you know. I don't want to take advantage. This is called the Pamlico Sound. The stars are her covers, and the ocean's her lover. But she knows that he gets around. The breeze heaves a sigh like a salty lullaby, and she falls asleep too. the Pamlico Sound. They've been calling for showers for 3 or 4 hours, but there ain't been a drop hit the ground. The Atlantic's just right on this Saturday night as she falls asleep to the Pamlico Sound. Well, her line's in the water like her old grandpa taught her, and her pole's by her side on the ground. And she'll sit there till it's night, just watching them bite. But she throws them back in the Pamlico Sound. Like the waves and the foam, she follows the tide, 'cause she knows it'll bring her back home. Roads that she'll travel are steep and paved with gravel, but she left her problems in town. She holds time in her hands, and as rain hits the sand, she falls asleep to the Pamlico Sound. Thank you. Well, this is a song I wrote with a buddy of mine, kind of for this part of the night. We wanted to write something that kind of had, you know, everybody in it that we connect with through music. The folks who come and listen to us and support us, and the people at the venues and the staff and the other musicians, even the characters that we make up and put in our songs. They're all in here somewhere, and you're probably in here somewhere too. This is called the Goodnight Chorus, even though it doesn't have a chorus. It's just a bunch of verses like a Bob Dylan song. Good night to the waitress and the regular crowd. Good night to the band that's playing too loud. Good night, good night, good night to you all. Good night. Good night to the ladies. Good night to the gents. Good night, you go-getters that got up and went. Good night, good night, good night to you all. Good night. Good night to the gypsies, the weary, the worried. Good night to the tipsy, the drowsy, the blurry. Good night, good night, good night to you all. Good night. Good night to the cowboys and the rodeo clowns, to the salt of the earth and the dust of the ground. Good night, good night, good night to you all. Good night. Good night, you street preacher reading from King James Dean. Good night, all you pushers in the alleyway queens. Good night, good night, good night to you all. Good night. Good night to the voice of a lost generation, singing for tips in a dark railway station. Good night, good night, good night to you all. Good night. Good night, you ambitious, too big for this town. Come back when you're ready to lay some roots down. Good night to the hustlers, to the wise guys and thieves. Good night, all you skeptics and those who believe. Good night to the late crowd. Good night, early risers. Good night, all you poets. Good night, plagiarizers. Good night to the faithful. Good night to the few. Good night, all you lovers and the ones that love you. Good night, good night, good night to you all. Good night. Good night, good night, good night to you all. Good night. One more. Can I close this out with some gospel? Can I do that? That won't hurt anybody's feelings, will it? This is an old one, and if you know the right words to it, then you can sing with me on the chorus. See if I remember it. I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk. Let me walk close to thee. Let me hear you if you know it. Just a closer walk with thee. That's okay. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Don't be shy. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Through this world of toil and snare, when I falter, Lord, who cares? And who with me my burden shares? None but thee, dear Lord, none but thee. Try it again. Just a closer walk with thee. That's getting better. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. My feeble life is o'er, time for me will be no more. Guide me gently, Savior, to thy kingdom shore, to thy shore. Let me hear you. Just a closer walk with thee, beautiful. Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. One more time, let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Thank you so much, everybody. My name is Jacob Johnson. I love you. We'll see you next time. Good night. Thank you.